Blog Talk Radio. Greetings and welcome to the Sales Sense Reality Talk Show with your host, Mike Krause. Mike has sold over $100 million in sales and offers Fortune 500 strategies, tactics, and tools to sales professionals and business leaders. He created this show with one thing in mind, for sales professionals to share their secrets with each other. Join us every Wednesday at 12 to 12:30 Eastern Time, or sign up for updates on Mike's mailing list at salessensesolutions.com. Mike appreciates you listening and wishes you good luck on your next sales call.
Well, welcome. It's Mike Krause with the Sales Sense Reality Talk Show. Thanks for taking time out of your busy day to talk with myself and Judith Glaser. I'm really excited to have her as our today's guest, and she's one of the most innovative and pioneering change agents in the consulting industry. She is the world's leading authority on we-centric leadership. Through her dynamic, interactive, and proactive keynotes and leadership summits, she has introduced her powerful transformative technologies to CEOs and their teams at major Fortune 500 companies. In 2007, Benchmark launched the Creating We Institute to offer new partnering and research opportunities to enable clients to expand we-centric thinking in their organizations. Through Benchmark's innovative Creating We technologies, leaders are helped to address challenges at the intersection of culture, leadership, and brand. Executives learn to set and achieve new benchmarks for success, resulting in higher levels of profitability, expanded market share, and a renewed vision for the future. Judith draws upon her deep expertise in neuroscience, human behavior and development, psychology, anthropology, linguistics, and transformational social sciences to help clients graft new practices into their culture, enabling them to discover their DNA and reshape their company's genetic code for success. Please visit her website at Creating We Institute. Without further ado, Judith, how are you this afternoon?
I'm great, Mike, and I'm so thrilled to be here. I really am excited about this.
Yes, me too. I can't wait to learn more. So tell the listeners a little bit more about yourself and your background, and then we'll jump in with some other sales questions and all about the Creating We Institute, too.
Okay, well, I've been in this business for quite a while, and the business that I realized that I was in years ago, and which is the heart of the work that I do now, is that I realized that every conversation makes a difference. Although we were trained in school that when we have conversations, it's to get information from each other and exchange information, what we're learning now, especially because of the new insights in the world of neuroscience, is that conversations are not just information sharing. That's just at the surface level, but they really are enabling us to shape not only our relationships with each other and the future that we have together in our relationships, but they are actually conversations actually influence and shape our DNA. It actually gets down to that level now in our understanding.
Amazing. Tell a little bit more about when you refer to DNA and how it gets so deep. How does that happen?
So what happens is that as I'm listening to you and as you're listening to me and as the people that are on the line are listening to both of us talk, we actually get visceral reactions. So, you feel about someone. You don't just think about them, and you don't just hear them, but you actually have a feeling about them. Can you think of any of the recent conversations you've had where you've had a very high emotional experience in your conversation with someone? Can you think of one of those? Like, can you think of a really good experience and how it made you feel? Because that's the place where we really start. Yeah. And so what are some ways that it made you feel when you felt really good in that conversation?
Well, when I felt connected. I felt like the person was, number one, I always look for, being in sales, a good listener. I try to always see if that person is in it for themselves or is it in it for the client. Mm-hmm. So I pay attention to listening skills and how they're asking me questions, and if they're repeating back to me what I just said to make sure that we are on the same page. Mm-hmm. Those are a couple of things that I like.
Right, and so you feel those. You feel if that person is connected. You feel if they're listening. You feel how they're doing it, how they're influencing you, and all those things are what our human body experiences or feels as we're connected to another human being or as we're not. And that actually registers those. You ask the greatest questions. You're listening for, is this person a friend or a foe? And that part of listening, actually, is coming from the part of your brain that is called the primitive brain, the amygdala, the reptilian brain, some people call it. But it's at the lower level. It's coded. The DNA of that part of the brain is encoded to listen for, can I trust this person or not? It's so fascinating. That gets passed along from generation to generation. It's not only from generation, but this came from our animal heritage. So this is the hardwiring that's literally coded in our DNA, and it's that part of our brain that listens in the beginning. Then it starts to move up to the higher parts of our brain, the top of which is neocortex, where we get the information or we put words to it, and then even better than that, the newer brain, the prefrontal cortex, where we start to think with each other about the future and have aspirations and really connect deeply with other human beings and step into their world. So we're not just listening with our ears, and we're not just speaking with words. We're actually triggering all different parts of our brain that are hardwired for us to connect or not to connect with others.
Yeah, it's all passed down from generation to generation, behavioral. When it applies, Judith, to a salesperson, what type of things can a salesperson do to start off on the right foot? I'm always a big believer in the 3-second rule. You have about 3 seconds before people make a decision or not make a decision, even if your presentation is an hour long, they've kind of already made up their mind. What are some things that a salesperson, professional, can be more aware of?
There's a lot. Years ago when I started my business, I actually started developing sales programs, and I in my mind realized that it wasn't about selling a product, that just like you, the focus is on relationships. And so I came up with these ideas as consultative selling skills way back then. And one of the things that I helped build is a model that, in fact, for some of the clients that I'm working with, is still something that they use as a guide for what makes better sales relationships. And it starts out with, while many people, the biggest mistake people make is they go in, they want to close a sale, they get nervous, they want to do a good job, they think about their product, and they go in and try to present their product to somebody so somebody will say yes or no. And that's the old style of selling. That's the style that actually gets people more nervous when they're selling, if they're focusing on the product, right? You know, in the old-fashioned, it was features and benefits. And so the idea is not to focus just on the features, but to focus on the benefits. And if they know how good your product is, they'll want to buy it. But again, that's still back in the dark ages for selling. As you know, this is your expertise. I'm speaking to the expert here. So.
Well, but it's so true. And I'm involved in sales training right at the ground floor as well. And the first thing the salespeople will come into, I got to learn the product. I got to learn the product. I got to learn the product. It's almost like a broken record. And I say that's the last thing you need to learn. You can go in and have a conversation about anything, and eventually the product will come out. You know, it's kind of, but the dark ages or 80s or 70s style of selling, it just doesn't work in today's marketplace. We have to have that connection. We have to have that relationship. And people want to know if you're genuine. So absolutely.
Exactly. And it's in that spirit that people, when they're doing their best selling, is when they're doing their best connecting with others. And so building rapport, taking the time to understand who the person is in the room, behind not the label, but the person behind the label, and getting to get a sense and a feel for what they like and what they want and what their aspirations are and why they're even listening to you or why they even invited you to come into their life. And at that level, that rapport-building level, that's when the brain is making all those adjustments at that very deep level, the reptilian level and the limbic level where our emotions are, trying to decide, well, how much do I really want to open up and share with this person? And if they feel trust in those early parts of the conversation, then you're going to learn a lot more about what their real needs are and a lot more about what their real aspirations are.
Absolutely. I always refer to that as peeling back the onion. I go on a lot of coaching calls, and it amazes me. It's almost like the salesperson is there for data entry. Okay, so how long have you been at the company? 3 years. Okay, what's your title? What's this? What's this? What's this? And I'm like, that is just all surface level. But in order to really dig into that relationship, you're going to have to ask a lot more questions and really understand and get that. Does this person trust me or not? Because anyone can say yes or no questions, but it's the hard ones going deeper and deeper.
That's exactly right. Exactly right. Years ago when I started in this field, I went out and I had the opportunity to be on sales calls just like you do, watching people sell. And there were two people that I was given for this particular client to help them come up with their sales model. One person had been they said he was one of the top salespeople. I mean, he had been there the longest. He had a large array of clients that he worked with and dealt with. And he was actually doing pretty good in his sales overall. I went out with him and observed him sell. And then I also got a chance to observe a new salesperson who had just started. And it was fascinating to see the difference. I don't know if you want to take a stab at what some of the differences might be. Or do you want me to
They led with their brochure and their product?
Yeah, well, it's interesting. The person who had been there longer had also taken 8 selling skills programs. So it was like he was really committed to learn how to sell. And maybe it was just having me as an observer there to add an extra little bit of nervousness on his part. But I could see him go into his head and try to remember the models and try to sort through all the models and try to figure out which one was going to be the best one to use. And like you gave the example of somebody who goes to information too much, this guy went into his head too much. And it was fascinating because it took him longer to really, as I observed, connect with the person, where the new person who had no model in his head, who wasn't told what's right or what's wrong, started out with curiosity, started out with wonder, started out with, wow, I wonder what this person's all about. And it was really beautiful to see the naive, before he got trained into a cognitive model, to see a naive connector do such a great job. So
absolutely.
Yeah.
No, sometimes people get nervous of that expert. No one wants to bump into the expert or the know-it-all. Mm-hmm. And I always state, and because I do some script writing, obviously, for companies, is be fascinated about their business and their life, and just a total wow. And I love the curiosity. Be curious about everything. Ask about their vacations and their other things that they have planned, and more intimate questions than just the surface level. And especially if people are taking time to respond, then they know that they're not prepared either. I would get that out of that message as well. So kind of going into one thing, since you and I have met with a lot of salespeople, obviously, what are some great habits that in those relationships are formed by the top performers, and what are some bad things that are performed by the lower performers?
It's interesting. I think this is just my gut reaction to your question, and I'm sure you'll have a lot to add to this. But I know that when people think that they're going to or want to get a big contract, they put everything on the table. They say they can do everything. They actually overestimate or try to overestimate or over-aggrandize what they can do in the eyes of a customer, so that they think that that's encouraging the customer to want to do something with them, to buy from them, to spend time with them, and so forth. But human beings pick up, and we're sensitive to the overestimating of our talents. And actually, well, that might on the surface level seem like a good thing to do. It can often backfire because, again, human beings are sensitive to the nuances and what they're actually feeling about someone. They feel that that's not as trustworthy as someone who will be honest about what they can and can't do, and really help focus the customer on the kind of ways that they can bring their best strengths to the table. Does that make sense?
Oh, absolutely. The first thing that I always say is, I don't know, but I'll get an answer. That's just always more powerful, because sometimes people in a sales process, let's refer to the other person as a prospect, you haven't earned their business yet, they will throw out huge, challenging questions just to see if they're going to get that reaction by that salesperson. We're thinking about this, and I'm like, are you really thinking about that, or is that more of a wish? Is that a wish list or a need to have? And it's kind of funny how that comes back is like, well, that's a wish. And I'm like, oh, okay. I mean, because that's a great situation to be in, but, we don't have the capabilities to do that. And then you know what they usually say, Judith? We appreciate your honesty. So far, we haven't heard that yet.
That's right. That's right. And it seems to me in the world, when I reflect back at the world of sales and the world of leadership, that really being able to trust someone, being able to gauge that they're not out for their best interest, but they're out with your best interest at heart, is really such a fundamental part of being a great salesperson, and also fundamental to being a great leader.
Yeah, absolutely. I always refer to that as the miracle on 34th Street. Macy's might not have it, but Gimbel's does. So. And it's funny. I've won so many more business relationships by having that theory, just because they're like, well, he steered us in the right direction, and he didn't make any money. So it's a longer-term strategy. But if you're going to be in sales your whole life, or if that's something you really want to do and get into, it is a long-term strategy to do what's right always for your clients.
Mm-hmm. So, exactly.
What are some other things that you've seen out there that might be that bad salespeople do? Like, what are some other things that you have found in your travels?
Well, I was going to give you one more that is the good before we go to the bad. And the good is that the great salespeople actually get to learn more than just their products and services, but they actually start to understand more about the industry that their client, the person they're going to visit, that their client and customer is in. So that when they talk, they're talking from a bigger framework. They're not just talking, again, from that product sales or the service sales, but they're looking at what are the things that are going on in the marketplace that might be impacting the customer. And when you're in that bigger picture framework, again, it joins people together to have a shared view of what's going on in the world, and it, again, brings people closer together and creates that sense of intimacy around, well, they really do know the world that I live in. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. No, it makes perfect sense, and I'm always trying to educate other sales professionals, and using Google Alerts is a powerful tool where you can get feedback once a week or once a day on industry specifics. So when you go in there, you are more of an industry expert, and you've done your homework, and you're just more engaging. And clients really appreciate that. And I always remember a sales rep went into a large company and says, first question, so how are things going? They go, obviously you're not prepared. Our stock just plummeted 60% this morning, and that was the end of the meeting. So, this meeting's not important. We have other issues. But if that sales professional was prepared and they understood the company and the industry specifics, probably could have at least stayed there and maybe helped that client out, and especially a time of need like that. So
exactly. So those are the good salespeople. And I think one of the things that I see in people that are salespeople that aren't as successful is that they play around with ultimatums. Things like, if you buy this today, so they start to put pressure on the today decision. And they put pressure on people to close, period, and then their buyers end up with buyer's remorse, and they feel really, really, really bad about it. So their drive to close the sale, that old-fashioned close the sale piece, and you're a winner if you close it, and you're a loser if you don't, that kind of pressure that it puts on customers is so painful to a customer. A customer would much rather have, not that they shouldn't have, forever to think about it, but just let me think about it and let me talk to you again, and something that enables them to digest the size of a sale. But the pressure point, when they put pressure points on, it's I would never recommend a salesperson, if I were a customer, if I had that type of close and thrusted on me.
Absolutely. That definitely is the older style of selling, is the forced close, or they don't have any more widgets today. And I always say when someone's closing me like that, I say, that's okay. I'll wait for another month. It's not important to me.
Yep.
And then immediately they have nothing to respond to because they thought that fear tactic was going to work, which it never does anymore in today's society. But on the other hand, though, people sometimes go on the other side of it and they never ask for the business because salespeople don't like to hear rejection, which is kind of the opposite problem, I guess. But what other thing? Go ahead.
Well, I was going to say that leads us into the we-centered conversation, which is
absolutely
the whole trigger around rejection. So if you want to take me there, I'd be glad to go there.
I'm fascinated. Like I mentioned before, I'm working with two companies that are using Creating We here, and it's just such a great methodology to get people singing on the same page. Could you tell the listeners a little bit more about Creating We?
Well, when I came up with the idea that we are living in a we-centric world right now, it's sometimes that we swing from I to we, but it seems with the internet and our ability to communicate with other people, the world we are in is a we-centric world, and once we do that, we have to start treating each other differently. And one of the watchwords of the Creating We world is that we need to really develop the I's inside the we. It's not I or we. It's not, come together and we'll form this kumbaya group and we'll all think alike and we'll all feel alike. It's not that. Is that like in the situation where you're bringing two cultures together, there has to be a different set of rules or rules of engagement and agreements that people make with each other when they come together to learn how to build mutual support. And sometimes we just think more about my win and your lose, or my win at the expense of other people. Inside a we-centric world, there's a whole different set of rules that start to emerge where people learn how to support each other and grow with each other and get to know each other's needs and aspirations deeply. And out of that type of real, deep, connecting relationship emerges, actually, often, a bigger picture of what's possible than when you're just doing it alone or when you're thinking about it from an I point of view.
Absolutely. I guess there's that old statement, there is no I in TEAM, but they're definitely, with different cultures merging and together, what are some things that people can do to feel comfortable? Because I always feel that that's the first step of anything, is to get a little bit out of your comfort zone, not be siloed. I know that term is overused probably now, but what are some things that we can start getting two different cultures to start singing on the same page?
Well, first of all, it's really fascinating. The reason why we form cultures, and the reason why we form, or the reason why we have a culture, and the reason why we form silos within them, is that silos usually get formed either because people work together in a department and they start to call that a silo. So they'll say, well, sales department doesn't work well with marketing. Sales is a silo and marketing is a silo. A silo is in a way almost a negative way to talk about a department. It suggests that the departments don't talk well with each other, they don't share information, they don't connect a lot and get along. However, behind this, human beings have such a need to belong, such a need to have identity with others, that a department becomes their identity. And it sometimes seems like it's a silo when we have competing goals and objectives. So the biggest thing that people can do, and as you mentioned before, there's no I in team. I think that the I's in the team are the most important thing. And a lot of the practices that we try to teach leaders, and I'd be curious also to find out which ones you're finding are the most helpful in the Creating We series. But the goal behind the we-centric work is to learn how to listen non-judgmentally to what's going on inside of the world of another person. Listening to the other person and getting to know what drives them, their goals and aspirations, what's important to them, what's center stage for them. Just sitting and listening, believe it or not, creates a catalytic shift in our connectivity with another person that begins to create a bonding effect. And bonding, I don't know, have you heard of, I'll talk about bonding from a chemical standpoint for a second. Have you heard about oxytocin?
No, I have not.
Okay.
But
so I will share this with you, and you can share it with all your teams who are practicing we-centric leadership, and I think it's really powerful for your listeners. When human beings are talking to each other and connecting, and when I feel that you're reaching out and touching me in a positive way, and you can do it by physical touch if I just touch your hand, or you could do it by just my voice touching your heart and saying, I'm really interested in what you have to say, or I'm interested in what you're thinking. Those words actually create a chemical release in something called oxytocin. Oxytocin is actually a bonding neurotransmitter. It's a bonding hormone that has something to do with, we know, bringing people together to collaborate in a more impactful way. And it actually it sends messages inside the brain to open up. And you know when you're in a silo, you're not opened up. You're preserving, you're withholding, you're not sharing what's important because you're afraid, right? But this chemical actually sends a message to the brain and says, you can share, it's going to be okay, you'll be safe.
So creating that safe environment for people to feel comfortable in communicating and not being talked down to, or I've seen a lot of people state like, oh, that's I have an idea. So finally, after years of this person not saying anything, they finally get the courage to say, I have an idea, and then that next person to respond in a conversation says, that's a horrible idea. And then you never hear about that person ever again.
That's right.
Because we didn't give them that open, okay learning environment to, be safe.
That's right, to be safe. And that is, again, at the very primitive part of the brain. That's the part of the brain that is saying, if I'm going to get rejected, my ideas, who I am, what I stand for, if I can feel that that's what's coming back when I'm opening up with someone, it's going to cause me to retreat and not open up. And literally, there are parts of the brain, it's like turning out the lights in a room. It closes down the part of the brain that has your best ideas and your best thinking, and you will not be able to bring that to work. You're going to be in a very protective state of mind.
Yes, and that's when a lot of things don't work anymore, and then people wonder why things aren't getting done or changed.
That's right.
You bring up a great point there. It's almost like double-sided or double-edged sword is like we want to be individualized or individual people, but on the other hand, we're so attracted to joining groups, and you can see that all over the world is that everyone has their own little organization or groups that get together and empower themselves to talk about a similar topic. How do you bridge the gap for that person to come over and look at a company as a group, and not that we're after them or whatever fear that they're going through, not to contribute to the team?
So are you actually thinking of it in terms of the two companies that you're working with and them coming together, or just in general?
Well, I'm thinking about the two companies, and for them to get out of their comfort zone and welcome open arms, and that it's an okay environment. I mean, I'm just, how do you get those people to come along a little bit, and everyone to come along?
Yeah. So there are a whole bunch of techniques in both my first book, Creating We, and also in the 42 Rules for Creating We. And so if people are looking for things to experiment with and try, both of those books are an absolute incredible resource tool for it. The most important thing is that you set, when you're bringing two groups together, you talk with the groups about setting rules of engagement that will enable them to feel safe. And so the idea, the example you just gave, where somebody finally waited to put their ideas on the table and then they got smacked down by somebody else. When people get together for the first time, and even when they get together on renewed times, where they've already had that first engagement, but they're coming together again, it's such a wonderful thing to talk about. What would we like to see occur in this room? What kind of conversational space can we shape together that will enable us to have the best conversation? And so you encourage people in the room to come up with things that when they think about the best conversations, this is what happens. And so people will say things like, I'd like people to be open to my ideas even if they're different, or I'd like to have people listen without judging me, or I'd like to be able to push back if I hear something that I don't agree with, but have people realize that I'm pushing back to learn and grow, not to make them feel bad. And you just go on with the list of things that people want to put in the room as the way that they engage with each other, and ask people to agree to work that way. And if things go off center, to help us come back on track again, because we're all human beings and sometimes we don't realize what the impact we're having. And as you help people see that creating the space for we is the first part of enabling we to happen. And once that space is primed for success, primed for people to engage in a positive way, it's fascinating. People start to show up a different way with each other.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love how you just stated to create the space for we, to create the rules of engagement, to create this open space that it is okay to share ideas and things. That is fascinating. And I know you and I could talk hours on this, because I love learning more about the mind and bringing teams together. But unfortunately, we're already at the end. It went by fast.
Wow.
But yeah, it's go by. But I want you to spend a minute or two here and just tell the listeners a little bit more how they can reach out to you and some of your services, and we'll close it down from there.
Okay. Well, I have a couple of websites. The first website is my primary website for my company, and my company is actually called Benchmark Communications, Inc., but we changed the website to make it easier. That's a long thing to type. And we changed to creatingwe.com, creatingwe.com, which is the name of my first best-selling book. And on the site, I have articles, I have resources, I have tools, there are assessments, there are all sorts of things that people could click through to better get to know what the Creating We concept means in business and in the world. I also have, which you mentioned, the creatingweinstitute.com website, which is where I have built an institute with a number of other colleagues who are in wonderful fields like mine, and some are different. We're in neuroscience, we're in organization behavior, we're in sales management, leadership, and there's lots of, again, marketing, lots of wonderful people. And we come together every year to talk about we-centric leadership and creating we in the world, and what are the new discoveries that we're all coming up with that will help us create a more innovative and more collaborative workplace. So those are the two major websites. And because you've been such a wonderful host today for me, I will also share my very private website with people on the line because there, again, are articles in there that are found no other places on the web. And that is actually the website that has my name. So it's Judith, Judithe, that's my middle initial, and Glaser, Glaser. So JudithEGlaser.com.
Okay. Great. I will check that out myself. And I did read the 42 Ways to We, and I loved it. And like I mentioned, the companies are following the philosophy, and we look forward to learning more as we go throughout 2011.
Mike, that's so great. And I will let you know also that we have two new books coming out, two parables on Leadership Secret of Gregory Goose, and the second, Ultimate Power. That's his second sequel book. So if people go to my website, they'll start to look for these new books that are literally coming out in the next 2 weeks. You're the first to know.
Good. I like to be the first to know for a change, That's good. But as a salesperson my entire life, I think it's a Marine statement, first to go, last to know. So it's good to be in the know. So, but Judith, I can't thank you enough for taking time out of your busy day to talk with my listeners, and I've learned a lot, and I really encourage you to go out to JudithEGlaser.com and learn more and get engaged with Creating We.
Fabulous.
So thank you so much.
You're quite welcome. It's been a real treat for me, too. Thank you so much, Mike.
Have an excellent day now.
Okay,
Bye.
You too. Bye.